Hello everybody. This is a different video than most of you would probably expect on this channel, but as a person who's been listening to Pink Floyd for about a few months now, since like March or April or May of this year, it's something that I've become incredibly passionate about and surprisingly deep immersed in. I know quite a bit about Pink Floyd, the Pink Floyd mythos. In fact, did you know that Pink Floyd was originally not called Pink Floyd, it was called the Pink Floyd Sound? And before that, they were known by names like the Sigma 6, the T-Set, and the Megadeths. Today I thought we could do a Pink Floyd album tier list. Now, many people have already done Pink Floyd album rankings on YouTube, and that's what inspired this video. As a person who's only recently gotten into Pink Floyd, I feel like it might be interesting to offer my perspective compared to some of you guys who have been listening to Pink Floyd for like your entire freaking lives. And the way I got introduced to Pink Floyd is quite interesting, actually. I saw these covers of Minecraft songs in the style of Pink Floyd on YouTube, and I listened to them, and they were so ambient and peaceful and pretty, and I was like, well, if this is what Pink Floyd sounds like, I should check out the real thing. So I listened to Dark Side of the Moon, and I've been hooked ever since. Anyway, so obviously, as with any tier list, it goes from S to F, S being the best and F being the worst, with every tier in between denoting like amazing, fine, and then bad. So that is the way the tier list works. We are going to start with their first album, hosted by the late and legendary and great Syd Barrett. Now, there's a few things to preface when it comes to this album and all the couple next albums. They are very psychedelic, which I will note that I've never been really interested in the psychedelic sound. It's just kind of weird, and I know people who are like that weird thing, that weird style, but it's just not for me. That said, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like a character study for Syd Barrett as such the character he was. These lyrics are so weird. Like, he literally made a song about a gnome. It's such a fascinating character study, and there's also some good bops in there, like Interstellar Overdrive. Now, another thing to note is the type of Pink Floyd that I like is the long, atmospheric epics that they're known for. Three come to mind: Atom Heart Mother, Echoes, and Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Now, another thing to note is that if I had to rank all four of the members, it would have to be David Gilmour at first, the guitarist. Number 2 would be Richard Wright, the keyboardist. Number 3 would be Roger Waters, the main singer. Number 4 would be Nick Mason, the drummer. Sorry, Nick. Now, with that said, the rest of the album is kind of but there are some songs that I think truly deserve to put it in B tier. I think it's above average. Not the best, but not the worst. And now, with that being said, we move on to A Saucer Full of Secrets. Now, there are also a few tracks I can appreciate on this one. I love the intro, Let There Be More Light, and I also like the experimental avant-garde type sound of the title track. However, I do think this one is worse than Piper at the Gates of Dawn, which I don't think I even mentioned it by name. And that's because it features a lot less Syd Barrett, basically. It's as a band moving on from Syd Barrett, it felt like a band trying to find their footing and moving more from psychedelic to space rock. And I don't know, this album just really didn't click for me. It's gotta go in D. Yeah, I didn't really have a fun time listening to this one. The only thing I can commend it for is being short, and also those two tracks that I mentioned. And well, Let There Be More Light might be the only track I might listen to every once in a blue moon. What I said about the title track is how I can appreciate its experimental style. Doesn't mean it's good, it just means I can appreciate it. Now, speaking of more experimental stuff, and me and most of the Pink Floyd community can agree that it goes in F tier, because it sucks. It's too experimental. There's not a lot of things going on in there. They literally have a whole minute piece where just people are talking in Spanish, called a Spanish piece. People thought that deserved to be on an album, and it didn't. And it shows. They're still trying to find their footing post Syd Barrett, which I get it. Syd Barrett was such a such an influential character in psychedelic rock in general that losing him really shook the band up, but I'm glad that within a few years they were finding their footing. But 1968 and 1969, not great years for Pink Floyd albums, because next up we have Ummagumma, which, that's the way I pronounce it, Ummagumma, it's Ummagumma. And as with this album, it also goes in F tier. And I don't think that's uncommon in the Pink Floyd fandom, is to put those albums in F tier, because they suck. Like, I can respect Grant Chester Meadows for just being just a nice little track, but everything else kind of sucks. And I'm also kind of excluding the live versions, the live tracks that make up the first half of the album, and I know that's going to upset a lot of people, but I just haven't not gotten to those tracks yet. I only listened to the 12 studio tracks that followed the live tracks, and from what I heard, they suck. Well, from the couple of listens that I've given this album, they suck. They suck. They suck. Now, we move from an album that's an F tier to an album that might be an S tier. Atom Heart Mother. Fan-freaking-tastic. There's only one track on here that I consider to be and it's the last track, Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast. But every other track, the Atom Heart Mother Suit, If, Summer 68, and Fat Old Son, fantastic. Now, I don't think it deserves to be in S tier, and I'm really tempted to put it in A tier. To actually put it in A tier, because it's just a great album. Now, don't worry, for those who actually want to see the ranking of all my albums, not just in a tier list format, but in like an actual numerical format, that will be at the end of the video, along with my top 5 Pink Floyd songs. Maybe I'll do a top 10 just for funsies. But Atom Heart Mother, fantastic. Now we move on to Metal, and this is what I consider to be the first S tier Pink Floyd album, and that is because every track on this slaps. There's no misses like there was in Atom Heart Mother. Every track slaps. Even the 2-minute track Seamus, or Samus maybe? I don't know. I even found that to be a little a little endearing and nostalgic. But one of these days, excellent opener. A Pillow of Winds and Fearless, great country-infused tracks. They are country. Stop trying to pretend they're not. And I've never been opposed to country music. And then obviously Saint Tropez, the nice little tropical thing. And then we got to talk about Echoes. Now, if we're going to rank the big 3 Pink Floyd suits, then it would be Atom Heart Mother in 3rd, Echoes 2nd, and then number 1 be Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And that's just my personal opinion. If you like Echoes, then you do you. I'm still giving it an S because every song on this album hits. And now we move on to their second and last soundtrack album, Obscured by Clouds. This has some good bops on it, I will admit. What's the Deal, Childhoods, and Free 4, great. There is only one track on it that sucks, and that's the last track, Absolutely Curtains. I'm sorry, it sucks. Don't try to convince me otherwise. It's terrible. And in my opinion, it's also kind of forgettable. It's in between 2 great albums, Metal and a certain other album that we'll get to. And it just kind of suffers from that. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's kind of painfully average, if we're being honest. And now we move on to The Dark Side of the Moon, which launched Pink Floyd into the mainstream, and for good reason. Now, I have to go on a little side tangent here. People say Dark Side of the Moon is overrated. People have to understand that there's a difference between calling something overrated and it actually being overrated. I don't think Dark Side of the Moon is overrated. Sometimes popular albums are popular because they're great albums, and I think Dark Side of the Moon is a perfect embodiment of that. It may be one of the best albums of all time, but it's certainly not the best Pink Floyd album of all time. It's still going in S tier because it's a great, psychedelic, fun, trippy journey that goes on in your head for 43 minutes, and it features one of my top 5 Pink Floyd songs of all time, Us and Them, which, if we're speaking about the debate of Time versus Us versus Them, I gotta go with Us versus Them. I'm very sorry. I love Time and its guitar solo, but I just the saxophones in Us versus Them, it's, well, I keep saying Us versus Them, it's Us and Them. Come on, get it right, you fool. Now we get to my official favorite Pink Floyd album of all time, and that is Wish You Were Here. Every track on this thing hits, and it contains 2 of my favorite Pink Floyd songs of all time. Shine On You Crazy Diamond, easily my favorite Pink Floyd song of all time. And I'm glad that with the Wish You Were Here 50th Anniversary Edition, we're getting a full Shine on New Crazy Diamond Parts 1 through 9 full track. Because up until now, I've been using a local audio file, and I'm very excited that we're getting that officially. And then also Wish You Were Here, also my top 5. It deserves to be S tier. It is the greatest Pink Floyd album of all time, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Now, speaking of that, let's move to Animals, because there are a lot of elitists that think this is the greatest Pink Floyd album of all time, and it's not. But I'm not saying it's bad. Oh no, good God, no. It is not bad by any means. I mean, the intro and outro track are kind of forgettable, but the 3 middle tracks, fantastic. Now, you might be wondering where I'm going to put this. It's going to go in A tier, because it is still a great Pink Floyd album, and it fits with the type of Pink Floyd that I like, which is like long, atmospheric, moody, and it creates its own unique sound for itself by being so heavy, and the guitar is being distorted, and you can't forget its innate catchiness with "Ha ha, sure right you are." It's pretty freaking catchy, and it's just a personal opinion of mine that it doesn't deserve to be quite in S tier just because of those intro and outro tracks, but it is still a great album and deserves to be talked about. Now, this will be the most controversial take in the video, is The Wall. Now, don't get me wrong, there are great songs on The Wall. Comfortably Numb, Hey You, Young Lust, great songs. But as an overall album experience, it's going in B. Yeah, it's going in B. And I am very, very sorry to those who consider The Wall the best album from Pink Floyd. And I'm also quite scared of the backlash I will receive. Now listen, The Wall, I respect it. I can respect the theatrics of it. I can respect Roger Waters coming up with this entire story of a jaded rock star. I can respect it. I promise you, I can. But that is not the Pink Floyd that I like. Like, I actually kind of think it would make more sense for this album to just let you get lost in like a 23-minute epic. You know, because like, in my opinion, it's kind of like a coping mechanism. Like, how many people put on music as like a coping mechanism or like to feel a certain emotion? I feel like it would make more sense for The Wall to be kind of atmospheric and you know, the traditional Pink Floyd epic. But it wasn't. The closest thing we got to that was Comfortably Numb, which was only 6 minutes. And in my opinion, it just kind of suffers from that. Animals is what I think The Wall should have been. So, speaking of that, you can see a clear progression in Pink Floyd's like style, going from Metal all the way to about Momentary Lapse of Reason. So Metal is pure experiments, right? The Dark Side of the Moon focuses on human emotion, like greed, time, and death, and all that stuff. And then Wish You Were Here saw themes of alienation and relationships in the music industry. Animals turned to political themes, and The Wall turned to just full theater stage play. And then the final cut, which we're about to discuss in a minute, just turn that up to 11. And then Momentary Lapse of Reason to dial it back. There was no concept, just pure straight hits. I think there were only 3 hits on a Momentary Lapse of Reason. Now, speaking of the final cut, it is going in D. Yep, I said it. It's going in D tier. It is everything I don't like about The Wall, just tempered up to 11, and that is why it goes there. It is not my favorite. I'm sorry. It feels like a Roger Waters solo album, and just with the Pink Floyd name stamped on it. And I can't even say that about David Gilmour, because The Momentary Lapse of Reason feels like a David Gilmour solo album with the Pink Floyd name stamped on it. Only this time, the tracks are actually quite great. Learning to Fly, On the Turning Away, even One Slip. Great tracks. And I know people hate the sound because of the 80s sound, but I actually quite like the 80s sound. And in a way, it creates its own unique style to it. Now, is it on the same tier as Adam Her Mother and Animals? No. Is it on the same tier as The Wall and Piper at the Gates of Dawn? Yeah, probably. And I don't think it's average. I think it's actually quite better than what people say it is. People just don't like it because it's way too different from all the Roger Waters that they're used to. But just come at it from my lens, where David Gilmour is my favorite Pink Floyd member and not Roger Waters, and maybe you'll appreciate it more. Who knows? Now we get to Division Bell next. Now Division Bell has one of my top 5 favorite Pink Floyd songs of all time, Coming Back to Life, and there is no denying that this album is great. And I love how ambient it is, and how it actually kind of has a theme again. But there have been quite a few complaints about how it kind of gets repetitive. Basically, how David Gilmour just says like a couple lines and then just 8-minute guitar solo. That's the common meme with Pink Floyd songs, is that they're all kind of like using the same framework. And I can see why Division Bell gets panned for that. Now, is it better than Momentary Lapse of Reason? Yes. It's going in A tier. But I would put this in a low A tier. Like, it's great, but the sheer length and repetitiveness does drag it down for me just a little bit. Now, we get to the second controversial take in this video, which is The Endless River. I'm just going to say it. I don't hate it. Now, as a person who... my favorite artist of all time is C418, who made the Minecraft soundtrack. I love ambient music, and this is basically what I love about Pink Floyd: ambient guitar work, and it's just everything that I like about Pink Floyd. And I don't hate it. Now, is it comparable to their best work? No. The best Pink Floyd work is when all 4 members contribute. I'm telling you this right now. You cannot compare Roger Waters' lead heavy work and David Gilmour heavy work and say one is better. No. Let's all agree that the best Pink Floyd is when all 4 of them were working in harmony with each other. Now, this is going in C tier because, like I said, I don't hate it, and it's not bad, but it is kind of leaning on mediocre territory, just like Obscured by Clouds. So that's kind of perfect. Now, obviously, not everyone is going to agree with this list. People think The Wall would be number 1. People think The Endless River should be lower. And if you're a Roger Waters super fan, you think The Final Cut should be higher. But that's just my personal opinion. Now, I don't know how much this list will change in, I don't know, when I come back to it in a year or something. But we'll see. I just thought I should offer my little opinion on every Pink Floyd album and just talk about them. But if you like this video, just, I don't know. I'm not telling you to like or subscribe. That's kind of overused at this point. I just wanted to make something fun and quick and easy and just talk about Pink Floyd for a little bit. So I guess I'll see you all in the next video that I do. Bye!